Imagine, instead of sullenly signing the Peace of Versailles in 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II proudly sips schnapps in Paris, and the British are forced to learn German words like Gemütlichkeit to order tea from their new masters. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? In reality, Germany lost, and we all know what that led to. World War II, the Cold War, and ultimately you and me reading this over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. But what if history had taken a sharp turn, and instead of a humiliated empire, we would have gotten a triumphant machine of German discipline? The irony is that the Kaiser, who dreamed of greatness so much, in real life ended his days tending a garden in the Netherlands. By the way, he was not a very good gardener. Perhaps he would have been better off planting imperial ambitions than roses. Why is this idea so catchy? Because it is not just a game of what if, it is a look at a moment when the world was at a crossroads. One shot in Sarajevo, one successful offensive, and everything could have turned out differently. Imagine how we would have lived if, instead of American gangster films of the 20th century, we had watched German epics about heroes in helmets, and instead of Charlie Chaplin, the Kaiser had personally made propaganda comedies. It's not just interesting, it makes your heart beat faster just thinking about it. What if we could all be part of a completely different world? So hold on, because I promise, it's going to get even more interesting. This topic is a real magnet for the mind. Why? Because the First World War was not just a war, it was a moment when the world was teetering on the brink, and one bad move could have reshaped everything. Borders, cultures, even the way we argue about politics at the dinner table today. Imagine the alternative. Instead of American jazz, German marches on every corner. Instead of Hollywood, the film industry from Berlin, where the main character always wears a helmet with a spike. It's interesting, isn't it? And it's not just a fantasy, it's a game with real historical threads that we're going to unravel. I promise. It will be exciting, with a touch of humor and a couple of surprises that will make you say, "Wow, I didn't think so." So sit back, grab your coffee, and let's go on a journey where history takes a different turn from where we're used to. So, let's go back to 1918. In reality, the Allies Britain, France, the United States, and others have forced Germany to surrender. But let's imagine that Germany wins a decisive battle, say. The spring offensive of 1918 does not fail. General Ludendorff, that stern uncle with a mustache that looks like a boot brush, doesn't lose his nerve, and the Kaiser doesn't run off to plant flowers. German troops break through to Paris, France surrenders, and Britain, exhausted by the war, agrees to peace under German rules. What happens next? Let's take it step by step, and believe me, it will be fun. What if everything had gone exactly like this? Imagine the negotiations. A French general nervously rubbing his mustache and signing the surrender, while a German officer with a stone face dictates the terms while drinking coffee from a trophy cup. The British, by the way, could have tried to save face by saying, "Well, we didn't really lose. We just decided to take a break from Europe." But jokes are jokes, and the reality would be harsh. Germany dictates the rules, and the world is forced to adapt. The first thing that changes is the map of Europe. There is no Peace of Versailles, so Germany is not losing territory, but rather gaining it. Alsace and Lorraine remain German. Poland is not reviving as a state. Sorry, dumplings and potatoes. You'll have to wait. Central Europe turns into Germany's backyard. Austria-Hungary is disintegrating, but under the watchful eye of Berlin, and puppet states are emerging from the wreckage. Imagine a Hungarian prime minister who calls the Kaiser every day with a question. "Your Majesty, is it possible for us to go for a walk without supervision today?" The irony is that the Kaiser, who in reality was a bit of a theatrical poseur, here becomes a real father of nations, stern, but with a baton in his hand. By the way, what about those who were left behind? Czechs, Slovaks, South Slavs? They all dreamed of independence, but in this world their dreams are dissolving into the German order. Perhaps some Czech writer would write satirical stories about life under the Kaiser, but the censors would quickly cover them up. Germany here is not just a winner, but the architect of a new order, where every step is calculated like a clockwork. And what about Russia? The 1917 revolution is still happening, but the Brest-Litovsk peace, which was in reality temporary, is becoming reinforced concrete. Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltics remain under German influence, something of an eastern branch of the empire. Lenin, by the way, is furious. His dream of a world revolution is extinguished when German soldiers begin patrolling Kyiv. Maybe he would even write an angry pamphlet about Kaiser's imperialism. But who would read it to the sound of German marches? Russia in this reality is a separate drama. Without a chance to regain the lost lands, the Bolsheviks could have thrown all their energy into the internal struggle, and the civil war would have dragged on even longer. Or Germany, sensing its weakness, would have moved further east. Imagine German garrisons in Odessa or even Crimea. Crimea is ours, the Germans could have said, and it would not have been as funny as it sounds. Now the West. France is in despair. Paris is under the German boot, and the French have to endure Germans ordering croissants with perfect accents. Britain retains its empire, but its influence is weakening. Germany dominates Europe, and thus trade. By the way, imagine the German fleet now sailing the English Channel, while British admirals grit their teeth. If only we had listened to Churchill earlier. Although in this reality, Churchill probably writes sarcastic columns about how German cuisine poisons the world with sauerkraut. France, by the way, could be a source of quiet resistance. Imagine a cafe in Bordeaux, where intellectuals whisper about glorious days and plan guerrilla actions, hiding wine from German inspectors. And Britain, it would have proudly held on to its colonies, but would have been economically inferior to Germany. Perhaps even the empire would have collapsed earlier due to lack of resources. Technology is another story. Germany has always been famous for engineering, and it is flourishing here. Without the yoke of reparations and the economic crisis of the 20s, German scientists and industrialists rushed forward. Aviation, automobiles, chemistry, all explode with progress. Imagine, instead of the American Ford, we were driving Mercedes as early as 1925, and the first Autobahns appeared not in the 1930s, but immediately after the war. It's ironic that the Kaiser, who in reality loved to show off at parades, could have become the godfather of the automotive industry here. Imagine his mustachioed face on advertising posters with the inscription, "Speed is German." What if this progress had gone even further? Perhaps Germany would have been the first to launch a jet-powered airplane or even a rocket. Imagine a German Sputnik in the 1930s. The Allies would have been biting their elbows, and the world would have been wondering, how do these guys with mustaches do everything? Culture is also changing. Without the humiliation of Versailles, there is no ground for Nazism, so Germany remains a monarchy with imperial ambitions. Art flourishes, but with a German flavor. Instead of jazz, it's Wagner. Instead of Hollywood, epic films about heroes with sabers. Bavarian beer is becoming a global brand, and French wine is quietly drunk in cellars so as not to annoy the new owners. By the way, imagine Einstein not fleeing to the United States but working in Berlin. Perhaps the theory of relativity would have appeared with a German accent and a couple of formulas about beer. Fashion would have taken a different path too. Imagine the 1930s. Instead of light dresses in the style of the Great Gatsby, there were strict suits with a German twist. Or vice versa, the German victory would have liberated the culture, and we would have gotten something like Berlin chic, a mixture of discipline and decadence. And what about the United States? Without World War II, because it probably wouldn't have happened, America would not have become a superpower as quickly. Germany dominates Europe, and the United States remains a distant relative who trades with everyone but keeps to himself. Maybe the Great Depression still happens, but without global chaos, it passes more quietly. It's ironic. Americans could complain that those Germans have flooded the markets with their damn cars. The United States could also become a cultural outsider. Without the need to save the world in World War II, Hollywood would not have blossomed so quickly, and the American dream would have sounded quieter. Perhaps we would have watched German blockbusters, and cowboys would have been replaced by knights in gray. Now, the interesting thing is, how would this have affected us? Without World War II, there would be no Cold War, no division between East and West. But would the world have been more peaceful? I doubt it. Germany, drunk with victory, could have gone overboard. Colonial ambitions in Africa, pressure on Britain, conflicts with Russia. Imagine the 1950s, German tanks on the border with the USSR, and the Kaiser, or his son, boasting about a new deterrent weapon, say, early missiles. It sounds familiar, but with a different emphasis. And herein lies the twist. Perhaps instead of the Cold War, we would have gotten a hot imperial game, where Germany and Russia, or its fragments, are fighting for world domination. And we, the moderns, would live in a world where history sounds like a thriller with an unpredictable ending. So what do we have? The world where Germany won the First World War is Europe under the Berlin boot, technology with German precision, and a culture where Wagner drowns out jazz. Kaiser Wilhelm II might have lived to see old age as the emperor of the century, not as a failed gardener. The French would have quietly eaten croissants with sauerkraut, the British would have grumbled about continental fashion, and we might have lived in a world where German is the second language after English. The irony is that this world might be more stable, but it would certainly not be more peaceful. Empires love to fight like dogs over a bone. But let's imagine ourselves in this world. Perhaps we would complain about the German bureaucracy, but we would drive on perfect roads and drink beer that doesn't give us a headache. Or maybe we would quietly envy the Americans sitting across the ocean laughing at our European showdown. This world is neither a utopia nor a nightmare, but something in between, where order borders on ambition. This story makes us think, if one small turn in 1918 changed everything, how fragile is our real world? We are used to thinking of history as something stable, but it is like a house of cards. Blow in the wrong direction and everything will fall apart. Maybe we ourselves live in someone's alternative reality, where someone once won the wrong war. Think about it over your next cup of coffee, or if we're in the German world, over a beer. So what do you think? This journey into what if is just the beginning. History loves twists and turns, and I love unraveling them with you. If you liked it, please like it. It's like applause for the storyteller. If you enjoyed thinking about these what-ifs, please like it. It's a signal that we're on the right track. Subscribe because there are many more stories ahead where we will turn back the clock and ask, what if? Let's figure out together how the fate of the world would have turned out, with humor, curiosity, and perhaps a little surprise. See you on the next trip.